things that pop out about it would be more like it's all the little snippets really that you need to pay attention to in terms of um the verses. These are the verses that I would beg you to pay attention to. So in chapter 11,
Correct.
notice certain things. Verses 22 mentions the prince of the covenant. All right, you can read that for yourself. Just for the process of time here, I just want to highlight the phrases that you pay attention to. Then verse 30, the statement of against the holy covenant and joining forces with those who forsake the holy covenant. Then verse 31, now this is what's going on, the pollution of the sanctuary
Right.
and replacing the daily sacrifices with an abomination. Then verse 22 talks about corrupting and flattering the wicked to go against the covenant. So those I
So
think are really the core verses that you need to focus on, because it's kind of reveals what the true issue is about, especially for this particular person or entity or system. So, and then verse 33, that's you read that already. When
correct.
now he's starting to kill by the sword, burn by the flame, imprison, spoil those who know God and have understanding, and they instruct many. Now, this is very important to know about, especially having understanding and instruct many. Now, Daniel is all about that. All right. So in Daniel chapter 1, God makes great mention of something. Daniel chapter 1, he does certain actions, okay? So these are things that you need to really understand, is that the focus really is what is God doing. That's what I want you to think about. So in Daniel chapter 1, here's the things that God doing. There are four things that God doing. God gave Judah's king into
Right.
the hands of King Nebuchadnezzar. And then it describes a little bit in chapter, and it expounds in chapter 4 what he gave to Nebuchadnezzar, which is he gave him a kingdom, he gave him majesty, glory, honor on all peoples, nations, and languages. So he gave Judah up into his hands,
Right.
Nebuchadnezzar, and gave Nebuchadnezzar all of this. Then, two, God brought Daniel favor and love with the prince of eunuch. All
Right.
right, that's setting him up for certain things. So God actually makes this eunuch love him and favor him, like him.
Right.
God works on the heart and the feelings and thoughts of people. That's showing you that, right?
Correct.
So that is important to know, because based on chapter 10, we're going to come back to that. All right. Then God gave Daniel and his three best friends. We know them, Azariah, Mishael, and Azariah. We're not going to use the slave names, people. Kunta Kente, not Toby. All right.
But
All
you
right.
know, we
And
we
so,
we love
yeah,
we love their slave names, man.
no, man, I reject that in the name. All right. So,
Hey, I'll pause for a
yeah,
second.
yeah.
This is an intermission.
Okay.
I was listening to a sermon, and he said, you know, even God knew that he had good representatives, Shadrach, Meshach, and a bad Negro. You understand me? So,
Yeah.
but no, she is right. Their slave names, as I studied it, was to indicate it was after the gods of Babylon. And
Absolutely.
so here is the reason why Eden says she refuses to use their slave names. All right,
Right.
continue. My fault.
Yeah. It's all good. It's all good. I can ramble, so you got to check me sometimes.
No,
But
you good.
is and so God also gave, so what he did, he gave Daniel knowledge and skill in, and this is skill in all learning and wisdom. So they give them skill to learn anything that's related to learning,
Correct.
academics, whatever you can learn, and they put their mind to learn it, they're gonna know it. And
Right.
wisdom.
Right.
So these are very key words you need to keep in mind. Very important in the book of Daniel. It's repeated over and over. Then God went above and beyond. Number 4, and this in Daniel chapter 1, God gave Daniel an extra gift of understanding in all visions and dreams, hence the
Dreams,
second half
correct,
of this book. You understand?
correct,
So that's the core stuff here. It's very wisdom, understanding, and it's repeated over and over. Daniel, I came so that you would have understanding. Daniel, I came, you understand? And now, and it's repeated in the excuse me, in Daniel later on. It's the wise. He who is wise. That's Daniel chapter 12. That's how it ends. It says the wise are given, new life. They're resurrected. Okay, so it's very important you have knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Be wise, because the end result for you is that you're going to be the one who's rescued and delivered. You
correct.
you are the one who's being protected. All right,
By
but you
whom?
gotta be wise, and it's and what I mentioned here in Daniel chapter 11 about and verse 33,
33, correct.
that his target is those who know God, have
Right,
understanding, and there's a third part: instruct many. So
correct.
think about that for a second. Just think
And,
about the in captivity, the people being captive. They weren't just being slaves, like almost like how they were in Egypt. All they were was laborers,
right,
really. They
right,
knew nothing else. They were they were the African slaves of prehistory before us. We had it a
right,
little bit worse, but I'm just saying that we were beasts of burden, and that's how
right,
they were treated as well. This captivity was a little different, but either captivities, that God doesn't expect us to just be beasts of burden. He wants us to instruct many. That's why
right.
he's allowing us to do that, be captive. And over, I want to mention a couple of people that happened during this captivity that'll be interesting for you to check out. All right. So the
Also
book,
check out Isaiah 60 when you talk about them being the light. But go ahead.
absolutely. And so that's the whole reason, is like, I took you out of your the prime real estate, but even though you're over there, you still have to be the light.
Correct.
Okay? So let your light so shine before men that they will see your good works and do what?
Glorify your Father which is in
Glorify to
heaven.
God. That's the whole thing. That's it. So what you do is not about you saying, "Oh, it is I, Nebuchadnezzar, who built great Babylon." No, he was supposed to say, "I did this because God gave it to me," and that was the
Right.
whole point. That's the whole point. He said, "Let them see your good works, so you can glorify God." That's why you talk about your works. Only because you need to point your works to God. Like, I'm doing it only because God gave this to me to be done.
Correct.
Only because He's given me the power. Only because only because. And so check out Nehemiah. God placed them in different positions during the Babylonian captivity so that
Right.
he can save people. He wanted to save the kings of these nations and the inhabitants and the other citizens. God is trying to save everybody, not just,
Amen.
that's it, man. All of us, no matter what religion, creed, color you are. That's why he says there is no Greek, no Jew, no male, no female, no slave, no free. He doesn't mean that those kinds of divisions don't exist. It's like, in the sight of God, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. And
Correct.
this is God's perspective. Daniel's book is God's perspective. It's not our perspective. That's why I say we don't want to get bogged down in history. That's
Right.
our perspective. Our perspective is history. We're trying to see God's perspective,
Amen.
what He's trying to do. So when we focus on ourselves, we start having an eye problem. I'm a nurse, right? You're gonna have to go to the eye doctor. You got an eye problem. They got a lot. Nebuchadnezzar had an eye problem. It was not I, the great. There was somebody else who talked like that. I will ascend above the clouds. I will be
Oh,
like the most high.
you didn't go there.
Ezekiel chapter 28, Isaiah 14. Check that out. Write that down.
Wow.
Nehemiah, he was a cupbearer to the king of Persia. Ezra was a scribe for Israel. You know, he did, and also a leader. Zerubbabel, I know that's a big old fancy word. He and Ezra, they kind of went together and led some of the captives back into from
Correct.
Babylon to, Israel. And then the book of Ezekiel, he was a prophet and a priest.
Yes, he
All
was.
right.
Yes, he was.
Esther became queen of Persia. Daniel, so all of these people, Daniel, he was a wise man, and then he
Right.
became a prince over everybody. He became the
Correct.
ruler, and then his three friends, Azariah, Mishael, and Azariah, he was his three subordinates under him over the whole province. Darius set them up like that,
Right.
and then Esther became queen. So he's like, and God did the same thing, and where? Exodus. No, not Exodus. Genesis. Excuse me, with Joseph. Second to
Yep.
Pharaoh.
Yep.
What is God doing? He's placing us in all the positions of life. The next thing I want to mention is also somebody who's unnamed in the Bible and is talking about the captivity. And I want to mention her because in the guise and in the thinking of chapter 11, which is we're saying that Syria is the north part, Syria is included. And so we know that Syria took the northern kingdom, and there's one person that stands out during that time, which is she's unnamed. She's called the Little Maid.
Yes. Naaman's maid. Not
Yeah,
Naaman, but
exactly. So
yeah.
the Syrian general, she witnessed to the Syrian general. He
Correct.
was one of the guys who actually was conquering Israel. And if you know that the Syrians were known to be very cruel.
Mhm.
All right. So this cruel general of the army who's leading the army to conquer all these nations was converted. This cruel general.
Yeah.
You
To
see
the
what I'm
point
saying?
that he said, when I'm with my master in his house, I'm not worshiping that God. He says something to that effect. He
Yes.
tells he tells Elisha that.
Exactly. Exactly. You understand? So what I'm trying to say, guys, is that God is doing amazing things. And although it's so hard for us so many times, we're going through all these things like, why am I a captive? Why am I this? Why am I in jail? Like Joseph, like that. And then what's happening here? You're gonna be burned by fire, you're gonna be killed by the sword, you're gonna be spoiled, you're gonna be in prison. What? Why? Because the enemy is trying to take us out. If you look at and it goes back, it started here, it's telling us more. Daniel chapter 7 is so important, and you studied that before. And now this is Daniel chapter 11 is showing you what they're talking about. Same words. Daniel chapter 7 is talking about speaking great words against the Most High, looking to think to change times and laws, making war against the saints. And that's where it
Yep.
is right here. So making war against the saints is showing you how. By killing by the sword, burning by the flame, in prison, spoil them.
Right.
Right? All these people we talked about, especially those who are instructed. Who's instructing? People like Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Little May, Ezekiel. All these
Right.
people. Right? Make sense?
Also,